Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for coming. Today we have with us Caroline Green and Julie Teflis. Um, they're going to tell us all about the adaptive equipment that we can use. First of all, there's going to be a PowerPoint, and following that, there'll be a demonstration of all the equipment. Plenty of time to answer any questions that you may have about the equipment. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Joan. Again, I'm Caroline. I'm an occupational therapist. This is Julie. She's a physical therapist. She'll be more of our expert on the mobility and things like that. So we're going to go over a couple of things regarding adaptive equipment. Does everybody know what I mean by adaptive equipment? Or maybe you've heard assisted devices. Can anyone give me an example of something? Cane. Rollator. There you go, a button hook. Yeah. So adaptive equipment are as we age and experience illness or injury or even have a surgery, we might find that things in life that we typically do might become difficult. So things from, oh yeah.
Yes.
So this would be like things like walking and moving around or even getting dressed. Sometimes it becomes increasingly difficult to keep independent and remain active and fit. Some of the things that adaptive equipment can do, they're just specialized tools to help us to perform these tasks that may have become difficult. Some of the categories that we're going to go over are mobility, hearing, vision, activities of daily living. So that's where the dressing, bathing, getting to the bathroom, those sorts of things, and also a little bit of home safety. I'm going to preface this that you probably have seen or know most of these things, but we're going to go into a little detail about why you might be recommended to use them and how they might be helpful for you. Maybe not now, but maybe at some point in the future. And this is just going to be grazing the surface of what is out there and the possibilities of different types of assistive devices and adaptive equipment that are available to you. So we'll start with mobility. 1 in 4 adults age 65 and older experience a fall annually. Some of the contributing factors to falls could be balance issues, it could be fatigue, it could be pain, it could be because you had a recent surgery, it could be because of a chronic condition like arthritis that causes increased pain in our joints or instability in our joints. It could be because of diabetes that reduces the sensation in your feet, making it harder to know when your feet are hitting the ground. So the first one we're going to talk about is canes. Canes are going to be the least supportive out of all the mobility devices that we're going to talk about. That would be for people with mild to moderate balance support needs. So you just need a little bit of extra support. The benefits of it is that they help distribute weight while you're walking and help to reduce falls and fatigue because you're not using as much of your own energy. And then there are a couple different types that we will go over in a moment. Considerations would be making sure that the cane is fit to you, which I'll also have Julie demonstrate how to do that. Then a little bit more supportive are walkers. Those are for, people that need more support than what the cane might provide. They have a wider base of support. A walker has 4 legs generally, and so there's more points of contact with the ground. The more points of contact you have, the more stable something's going to be, and the wider the base of support, the more stable something's going to be. So you have a couple of different types that, again, we'll go over. So you have your basic or standard, a rollator, or a knee walker, which is really used only in certain situations. Then you also have wheelchairs. This would be for someone who might need a little bit more support. There's different types of wheelchairs as well. You have your manual, which would be self-propelled or pushed by somebody, and also motorized. And then you want to make sure that if you're using a wheelchair or chair of any sort, that it's fitted to you. Also, I know a lot of people around here use scooters. I see them more for if you can get around your apartment or shorter distances, they're more for longer distances. Which helps to keep independence because you can get to the things that you want to do that are outside of your home. They also have 3-wheel or 4-wheel. 3-wheel are going to be a little less stable because again, not as many points of contact with the ground, but the 4-wheel is going to be a little bit harder to maneuver and the turning radius is smaller. The nice thing about the scooters though, let me just move this so you guys can see, is that they do operate on other terrains and outdoors pretty well. So, can I minimize this? Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure everybody could see. Looking at different canes, I don't know if everyone is aware, but there's actually different types of grips for each cane, and there would be a different use for each grip. Starting with the C grip, which is pretty self-explanatory. The grip is shaped like a C. That's that first one on the left there. This is a single point cane. It's pretty widely available. That's a wooden one. A lot of times you can find metal ones like in CVS or Rite Aid or Target or anything like that, or even on Amazon. And then you're going to go to your functional grip, which is over there. That's actually the offset. There you go. As you can notice that it's more like a T. The grip, it's a little bit more formed to a person's hand. It provides an easier grip and it provides more support than the C cane. Even more support is the other cane, that's the offset. And you'll notice that the top is curved a little bit. And what that does, it allows the center of the user's weight to rely on the strongest part of the cane. So it provides a little bit more stability. Now, all of these are single point canes, so you have to be mindful that they can fall on the ground, and if they fall on the ground, you want to make sure you have a solution to get them back up. So that's could be an issue with it. And then the last one is a quad cane. A lot of times that's used in very specific situations. You'll notice that it has the 4 prongs on the bottom. And again, that's going to provide more support, more contact with the ground, wider base of support. Used more like it would be like someone who might have had a stroke, needed a little bit more stability. Can you think of any other examples of why somebody would use a quad cane?
Sometimes I'll use it despite the diagnosis if like the quad or the single point is just not giving them the support they need. I'll go to a small based quad cane. If like the walkers like not enough for them or too much for them, like they're too good for the walker, but they're not good enough for the
microphone.
Sorry. So sometimes I would use the quad cane if someone was the single point cane was not enough for them. It wasn't giving them as much support, but they were too good with the walker. I would resort to a quad cane. Just because, like Caroline explained, it has the 4 points, so it's more contact on the ground and it's more stability than a single point cane.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to consider about something like quad cane is a little bit hard to sequence and coordinate just because it has a wider base. It's a little bit more clunky. It's a little bit more cumbersome, not as easy to store. It takes a lot more practice, I think, but if it's needed, it is helpful. All right, so speaking of that, so you want to make sure that the cane is at the right height. So Julie, if you could describe how you would fit a cane.
So there's bony prominence by everyone's thumb. It's called the radial styloid process. And that's where we size the cane. So when you put your arm down by your side, it should hit that point on your arm. So this one's too short for me. So a lot of the canes are adjustable.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that it's adjusted to your right height. If you're using something like this and you're not sure, I mean, as from the therapy department, we can kind of make sure that everything is fitted to you.
It should hit here with your side. Supposed to be the correct height, assisted device for you.
And then using the cane, it does take coordination.
So you always want to use it in the opposite extremity. So if I was having pain in my left leg, I would want to use the cane in my right hand. And then when you walk, the cane always goes first, and there's different sequences too. So this is the least, so it would go cane, bad, and then good. And then as you progress, there's different sequences where you should be able to do the cane and your bad leg at the same time for a more fluent gait pattern. But again, it takes practice, takes teaching. But most people, when they're first injured, it's a slower sequence. You might see it like this.
And yeah, you just want to make sure that you're taking your time when you're using a cane, because like that one is only the single point. It could be a little unsteady. So you want to make sure that you're not having to chase the cane. You're not letting it get too far ahead of you. And even with that, the right grip is important. So that one that Julie has in her hand has the grip. Okay, it's okay. You can see that it's a little bit built up. It has foam, unlike the C cane, doesn't have any extra grip. What the grip can do, especially if you have like arthritic hands, it helps to take pressure off those joints, because the bigger the grip that you have when you're using something, go for a cane, it could be going to holding your hairbrush. It's going to be easier on your joints and easier to manage and hold. So sometimes it's just a matter of finding what works best for you. They sell grips that can go on canes that aren't that expensive, that if you needed to accessorize, you absolutely could. The other part of it is at the bottom they all have a rubber grip, a rubber tip, and you want to make sure, just like your car tires, that can wear out too. It's just rubber. So you want to make sure you're keeping up with the maintenance on that, because if it wears unevenly and you have one side wears over the other, it can throw off your balance. The other thing is, if it totally wears away, then you're not having any traction and it's just going to slide out from under you, and that can definitely increase your risk for falls. They're also not that expensive to replace, and most of them are universal for canes unless you have something like very specialized to you. And also new canes aren't really all that expensive either. All right, now we'll talk about different types of walkers, and I think most of you have seen most of these, but I just want you guys to understand what the difference is and why you might use each type. So you have your standard walker. That's going to be one without wheels. It's just straight four legs with rubber tips on the ground. And it's going to provide the most stability. But the problem with this is, and we don't have one with us, but the problem with this is that in order to use it, you would have to pick it up to advance it forward. So that's a lot more coordination. But there are times when that might be the best thing for somebody. If we need to really move slowly, if someone needs to use it, well, like if they were non-weight bearing, they couldn't put weight on their foot and they needed to hop, they might need to use something like that. Then you have your two-wheeled, which is the one that we have up here that we most commonly see. The two front legs are wheels, and the back two could be rubber. This one has like little plastic glides on it. Sometimes there's skis, things like that, to make it easier to move. And you're just going to push this along like a shopping cart kind of, and it provides a little bit more mobility than a standard walker. And then we'll get into the rollators. You have your three-wheel rollator, not as commonly used as the four-wheel. Sometimes it's nice because it is a little bit easier to maneuver in small spaces. But again, like we talked about with the different canes, we talked about with the scooters, because it is only 3 points of contact with the ground, it's going to be more unstable at times. And there could be issues if you are going on like rough terrain. It's more likely to tip. And what we see most commonly, that I've seen a couple in this room, are the rollators with the seats. The nice thing about these is they have the four wheels, but they do move a little bit faster than, the rolling walker, which is why sometimes we would still recommend a rolling walker if someone needed to slow down a little bit. It does provide a continuous balance, and it does have the option for the seat. But just be mindful, if you're using the seat, make sure those brakes are locked. And if you can, put it up against a wall to provide increased stability. The brakes are important on the rollator because if it's on wheels, so with momentum, if you could, the rollator could go in one direction and you'll go in the other and you end up having a fall. So you don't want that to happen. So you want to make sure you're locking those brakes. So if you're reaching to the ground, lock the brakes. If you're reaching outside of the rollator, lock the brakes. If you're just stopping and standing for a few minutes, I'd lock the brakes because you just don't want to risk any issues. And the last one we'll talk about is a knee walker. This is very specific. It would be for somebody who wasn't able to put weight through their foot. So say they broke their ankle or they had surgery and the doctor said, don't put weight on your foot for 6 weeks. It takes a lot of coordination and you basically just put your knee up on it like you're riding a scooter and use your other leg to push around. But like I said, this would be very specific situation, not used very often, but just knowing, what the options are that are out there if you needed it. And then just like the cane, you have to make sure that the walker fits you appropriately. And it's pretty similar to how you would fit a cane.
It's on your wrist, when your arms are down by your side. That's where you want the handles to kind of reach. And then same thing like the cane, when you're walking, you would push the walker. It would be your bad leg or affected leg first, and then the good leg. And same thing, the sequencing with this can start off pretty slow, and then progress to just normal sequencing. Just pushing the walker along.
And you want to make sure that you're taking like steady steps. And then on the next slide, you'll see here, you want to make sure you have the right posture. If you let the walker get too far away from you like that, at some point, you're not going to be able to maintain staying upright. And you're going to end up, having issues and falling. It also can put a lot more strain on your back. So it's really important to make sure that with the rollators and the walkers, you're staying inside of the walkers, and trying not to let them get too far ahead of you. One of the things that I don't think a lot of people utilize enough is the fact that even just a walker has a lot of options for accessories. Because I think a lot of times people think, well, if I use a walker, how am I going to carry, my dinner plate? You can get accessories. This is just an example of one that Julie has there. That's a tray that kind of sits over the bar. It does attach on. Yeah, you don't have to attach it. You can just kind of, yeah, it just sits like that. The one in this picture, you'll notice that it looks like it folds up and down. They do have those as well. And then there's also walker baskets. But you can also just go low tech, not medical, and just add your own kind of bag. You can get a seat for the walker, which I don't see a ton of people using, but that's an option too if you feel like you need a place to rest and the rollator is not appropriate for you. I will say this though. Okay, 1 second. I will say this though. If you're adding any accessories, you want to make sure you're not putting too much weight in one area because walkers or any of these devices are great for stability when you're standing and walking up, but they are not great for pulling on or, if there's too much weight on one side, they'll tip over. So you want to make sure you're being mindful that the weight is evenly distributed and you're not just putting, 20 pounds on one side of the walker. Yep. Sure. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, but
So that's where I would recommend a physical therapy evaluation, just so we can evaluate what would be the appropriate height based on the person's posture.
yeah, and I think that you have to remember that nothing is cookie cutter. We're all human beings. Everybody is different. Everybody is built different. That's what makes us so unique, right? So what works for one person and how it's set up may not work for you, and that's okay. As like Julie said, as a therapist, especially PTs with the mobility stuff, we're trained to make these recommendations and see what works best for you. So that's what we're here for. That's why we do what we do, because we want to make people's lives easier. We want to make sure that people remain independent. We want to make sure that they're as pain-free as possible. So even simple things like making sure that your rollator, your walker, or your cane are the right height for you could change a lot of things for you. Sure.
I have. Thanks. I have an upright rollator. It's over in the corner. And I just wonder, and oh, G.D. Smith and I, just two people here have them. I wonder why more people don't use them.
Do you want to speak on that?
I don't really have an answer for it. Just in my experience with them, again, it takes more coordination, even though you're more upright. Like getting over thresholds and the turning radius, it's better for some and not for others, compared to just the standard rollator.
And I think they're a fairly newer thing, so I think, you know, it's just, again, like we said, it would be kind of a case by case basis, and kind of looking at the person. But I think, I mean, I haven't seen them as often. I have seen them more often, but I think that we haven't seen them that much because they're kind of a newer thing.
I don't know whether you're gonna get to this, but I wonder about using sticks. It seems to me, because I use a rollator, that I might put a stick down in something soft or a pebble, or I'm just curious about the stability or why one's better than another and what you think about using sticks. From a vanity standpoint, you can get looking like you're not needing something. But could you talk about sticks or are you going to? Yes, what do you call them? Trekking poles? I call them sticks.
Hiking poles.
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
what they are. So it's not really an assistive device that I'm personally familiar with, but I do see them a lot around Cathedral Village. Again, they require a lot of coordination, and stability. And for anyone that has any offset balance, I would not recommend them. So they really do require training with, especially for the sequencing. And then you also have to remember now you have something in both hands that you're walking with. Although I see some people walking with just one. But yeah, I'm not too familiar with them, to be honest, but I have seen them.
The grip on the hiking poles jams right into the bones of your hand. And if you have to put a lot of weight on them, you're so much better off with the ergonomic handles of a cane. And they come in dazzling colors.
Any other questions about canes or walkers or rollators or scooters or wheelchairs? Oh, we're gonna get to wheelchairs, but
I have a cane and it goes tap. Whenever I use it, it goes tap. Tap, and I don't like that. I want to silent. Feel like I have another grip. And it was the same thing.
Huh.
It's hard rubber, I guess, and it makes a sound. Isn't there something that you can get that doesn't make a sound? Whenever you. use
Yeah.
it?
it could be, does it, sometimes it's because, I would think that it's because of, if you take a look at one of them, is it a metal cane?
Yeah.
So the way that they're adjusted, because they're two pieces, I think it's actually the sound of the two pieces kind of coming together, if that makes sense. But I don't know, how does that one sound? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's happened to me. I think you
Yeah.
can type.
This comes loose. You kind of make that sound, but if it's tightened,
It's where,
you sure it's coming from there?
yes.
Or? Because once this is tightened, it won't make that.
When I was,
So when you're, yeah, but if I loosen this and try to walk with it, it could. Yeah, so you might have to tighten this component on the locker for that cane.
All right. All right, so we can always, if anyone thinks of anything else regarding this, we can always go over it at the end. But I want to move on to the next section, which we're just going to go over wheelchairs a little bit. You have a couple of different types, and this just, again, grazes the surface. If you had very specific needs, you would want to make sure you consulted a specialist and got what you needed. But the standard one is the manual wheelchair. That one is the one with the big wheels that we see people push themselves around in. The brakes are usually in the front, but that would be propelled by an individual manually or by someone pushing them. What's not on here, but we wanted to make sure we brought it. This is a transport chair. The two different leg rests on it were there purposely because I wanted you guys to see that there are different types of leg rests. So the manual wheelchair, again, is propelled manually by whoever's using it or by the caregiver. They're not that expensive. They are lightweight and they're portable. They fold up. You can put them in the back of a car. They do, technically for one that is with the big wheels that is self-propelled, would help with upper body exercise. But of course, you're doing more manual work, so you're at increased risk for strains and things like that. Harder to push up inclines, harder to go over uneven terrain. So sometimes power wheelchairs might be, more beneficial for you. That might be for somebody who has a harder time managing a manual wheelchair, or you need to go a longer distance. These are used for people who need them every day and maybe more so than just the long distances of a scooter. They're motorized to eliminate the manual effort. So they enhance mobility and give more independence. They also could provide additional comfort and they are easier to navigate on uneven terrain. Thing to consider about the power wheelchairs as well as scooters is that just like your car, you need to make sure you keep up with its maintenance. It's made of a lot of parts and pieces, so you need to make sure that those pieces are staying in order. And you also want to make sure that you're keeping that battery charged because you never want to end up somewhere where that battery's not charged and you have no way to, to get home. And yeah, so then the last one wouldn't really be recommended for anyone in this room at this point in time, but it's a Tilton space. Just wanted you to be aware that there's other things out there. And so this one, the whole seat kind of tilts to provide pressure relief. They're a little bit harder to maneuver. Most of them you can't maneuver on your own, and they're a lot heavier and they're pretty expensive. But the benefits are that because they provide pressure relief, they can help with to reduce risk for any skin breakdown and help with a lot of postural issues. So just like we talked about with all the other devices, you want to make sure you're keeping the right posture. You want to make sure that your back is supported well. You want to make sure that you're comfortable. You want to make sure that you're seated all the way in the wheelchair, that the wheelchair, the width of the seat, as well as the depth of the seat is what works for you. There's a lot that goes into those things. And if you are in a wheelchair, you want to make sure that the leg rests are on if someone else is pushing you. Or if you're propelling a wheelchair and you don't use your legs, you want to make sure those leg rests are on. What can happen is your foot can get caught and that momentum can actually throw you out of the chair or it can cause an injury. So you just want to make sure that your feet are positioned properly. Again, like we said with the rollators, the brakes are important. If you're reaching to the ground, make sure those brakes are locked. If you're just sitting still, I'd make sure those brakes are locked. If you're going to stand up from the wheelchair, you want to make sure those brakes are locked. Because anything on wheels, if what are the equal and opposite forces? So if you lean forward, the wheelchair is going to go back with the weight of your momentum and you could end up on the floor. And then you want to make sure that you have the right cushion. For most of you in here, you probably have adjusted your position at some point, if not multiple points while you've been sitting here. So for someone who may not be able to independently reposition themselves and weight shift, it's important that they have the right cushion and pressure relief in order to reduce, to provide the pressure relief that we might be able to do on our own, in order to reduce the risk for any sort of skin breakdown or pressure sores, and to make sure that you're comfortable. Because it can be pretty uncomfortable if you're just sitting in the same position for a long time. Any questions about wheelchairs? Okay. So, so another thing that you have to think about, so we're going to kind of move away from mobility, but like I said, if you have any questions or anything that comes up, we're here. So just ask us. So the other thing, oh, do you have a question, Cynthia?
Mobility chair, you said it's two.
Mhm.
I can't see them.
Oh, sure. So you have two kinds of, there's two different kinds of footrests, and then there's also like specialized things if you needed them. But the two different types of footrest, you have a standard footrest. Yeah, you can pull. Yeah, that's the standard footrest. It's just to keep your feet up, to keep your feet off the ground. And then you have your elevating leg rest, which actually can change position and elevate. It's a little bit more supportive than the standard footrest, and yeah. Yeah.
So usually their legs elevated, they usually go with the elevating leg rest, or it's like Caroline said, if someone just needs to have their feet off the ground while they're being transported, they'll usually just do the standard.
Yeah, and the elevating also helps, like it gives a little bit more support. So for somebody who can't keep their foot on a standard leg rest, the elevating leg rest provides that calf support, that little that's on the back, to help give, more stability and keep like someone's foot in place. Okay. All right, so now we'll go on to the next section. We'll talk about hearing and vision aids. These are things that can change as we age, as we have illnesses or injuries. And so a lot of times with the aging process, we might see decline in hearing or vision. A fun fact is that those with vision impairment are 2 times more likely to have falls than those without. And I was kind of shocked to hear this, that people with hearing impairment are actually 3 times more likely to fall than without. Because I think of vision as being so important to our balance. It's a key component to it. But with the use of hearing aids, you can actually decrease that risk by 50%. So obviously, as therapists, we're not going to be prescribing you hearing aids, but they do make a difference. Your hearing can really impact your cognition and how you're thinking. It can impact your ability to interact with others and your environment. So using hearing aids, while we may not be able to prescribe them to you, we would recommend you go to an audiologist. As an occupational therapist, if you were having a hard time managing them, we can help with the wear and maintenance and things like that to work out what would work best for you. The other thing is that there's a lot of technology out there now. So there's a lot of talk to text that you can turn any sort of audio into text. So you can, continue to interact with the things that maybe you can't because you have hearing loss. That was a jumble. But anyway, so then we also vision aids. There's a lot we can do for vision. There's a lot more that occupational therapy can do for vision. For anyone needing magnification of print or clear visions of their surroundings, it could be a simple thing like increasing lighting. It could be a simple thing like providing more contrast between different surfaces, like going from tile to carpet. There's a lot that we can do using glasses, using magnifiers, again, the tablets. There's so many accessibility features on our phones and our iPads and our tablets now that can really make things a lot easier. But bottom line with everything is that you want to make sure that you're using it consistently. It takes practice. It's hard to have a new routine. It's hard to try to do things differently when we do things one way for so long. So you have to be committed to using any sort of device so that you can, the more you use it, the easier it gets, and you'll notice a difference. Any questions on vision or hearing?
I'm just interested in top vision aid. What is that called? Or where you get that?
That's just a magnifier. Yeah,
I need it.
you need it? I can always help you find it. Yeah.
On the vision, under hearing aids, you said you could do text to talk, but you can do talk to text.
You can, yes, you can do, yeah.
But
Sorry, yeah, that's backwards. I don't know. That was a mistake.
no, I was,
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but you can do both. That's the great thing. Sometimes technology is such a headache, but there's so much out there now that it can really do much.
I think a lot of people don't know. Friend of mine whose vision is now full functional, was taught recently how to take her text and change it to audio.
Yeah, and that can make a big difference because they can continue to interact in the way you normally do. It makes it so that you don't miss out on things. But there's just there's just a lot out there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can. And that kind of stuff is very specific to each person and what the difficulties they have and even what the wants and needs that they have. What people are interested in, you know. It's all about person to person.
So you asked for a script for visual aids?
You would go to for anything that if you ever needed to contact therapy, we need a script from your doctor in order to bill through insurance. But yeah, you would just talk to them about what you need and request like that, like for something like you needed more help to address your visual impairments, you would want to consult like occupational therapy. If it was more like the mobility, like you were interested in getting a rollator or seeing if that was right for you, we had a script for physical therapy. All right. So the next thing we'll talk about is activities of daily living. So these are the things like getting dressed, getting bathed, getting to the bathroom, those things that you need to do and want to do throughout the day. There are some pretty simple tools that if I wish that I would have come up with because maybe I would be rich. But I didn't yet. So if anybody has ideas, I will gladly collaborate with you if we split the earnings. But so the first one is a dressing stick. Most of these tools that Julie's going to be showing right now, they're on the slides as well. So the first one on the left-hand side, that's a dressing stick. This would be for someone who has a hard time reaching kind of to their back. If you see in the picture, the man is using it to help bring that coat over his shoulder. There you go. Julie's demonstrating. And it can also be used to, if you need to reach down to your feet. Yeah, to help pull your shoes on, to pull your pant leg up, to pull your socks up. You can take the back of that and push your shoe down. But it's just an aid to help if you couldn't reach down, if you couldn't reach to your shoulder, if you had issues with your range of motion. And then we have a sock aid, and that simply looks like just a piece of PVC pipe and some strings. But somebody came up with it and it's been used for years. And you just slide a sock right on, drop it down to your foot, but you don't have to bend over that much, Julie. That's the whole point of it. And you would just be able to pull your socks on. I've seen this used a lot of people like with hip replacements where they have hip precautions and they're not allowed to bend down for a period of time. Or if you just have a hard time bending down and reaching your feet, they make it a lot easier. And it's a simple thing that maybe you might need, may have needed help from somebody. And you're getting help from somebody, and that's the only thing you needed help with, that it can make you completely independent. And then there's a button or zipper hook. This would be like if you had decreased fine motor skills, had arthritis, had a hard time managing small items and managing your buttons. They can be used to help you kind of just loop it onto a button. We should have worn buttons today. And to pull it through the hole so that you're not having to work so hard to do that. The next one is a long-handled shoehorn. It's just like a regular shoehorn, but it's a little bit longer. So then again, you're not having to bend down to really reach your feet. It makes things a little bit easier. And you just stick it kind of in the back of your shoe to pull it on. Did I forget a reacher? Thought I had one. Well, I forgot a reacher, but I think everybody has seen a reacher before. That's a pretty common one, but it's just a reacher or a grabber. Well, this picture shows that she's using it to, I shouldn't assume it's a she, but they're using it to take clothes off of a rack. You can use it to also pick things up off the ground if you can't reach down. Also, if your balance is off, using it to pick things up off the ground, increase your safety. You can also use it to help yourself get dressed. So if you have a hard time bending down to get your pants on, you can use it to help aid in that, to make sure that you're as independent as possible. And it does work well in the kitchen. Just a disclaimer, don't put too much weight into it. And don't use it for like a hot cup of coffee. There you go. That's a good idea. Yeah. Yeah. And you think of these things, then it also, they help to conserve your energy. So these tools are pretty helpful in a lot of different ways. Sure.
Do you buy most of these things online?
You can buy a lot of things online. Almost everything is on Amazon now, right?
Sure. There was a special catalog for this kind of thing.
They do, but I'm going to give you a little hint. A lot of these catalogs and things like that, they're medical based, and anytime you put something medical in front of it, it's going to be more expensive. So sometimes you're better off, especially something like a button hook, just ordering it like on Amazon.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Do we have another question, or did I just? Okay. There's also things that can be used for when you're eating. So if you have a hard time scooping, we have scoop dish that has a little bit of a built up lip that can aid in being able to scoop your food, or they have a divided dish. For visual impairments, there's also different colored, plates or things like this nature, that provide contrast, which can help with those visual impairments to locate food. But even just using standard, like a different colored plate. So if you're using a black plate and putting your mashed potatoes on a black plate because it provides contrast, is going to make it easier for someone with visual impairments to locate their food and independently eat. These cups that are in this picture wouldn't be necessarily recommended for anyone in this room right now, but there are things out there that if someone has a hard time holding a standard cup, or they frequently spill, or they have a hard time with swallowing, that there are devices that are out there for that. And then the last part, there's either you have weighted utensils, which provide a little bit of weight to them. This would be good for somebody who might have, any sort of tremors, or need a little bit of the feedback that weight provides that a standard utensil doesn't provide. And there's also built up grips. There's a couple of different types. You can go really low tech, like what Julie has in her hand there it's just a foam tubing, and we order it in therapy. But they also make grips that are kind of like that are universal and can be used for anything. So we have a toothbrush right there, and you can cut that and you just stick it in, and it builds up the grip a little bit. And then we have this other type of grip. Yeah, that's called a universal cuff, but that would be for someone who couldn't really grip a spoon or fork, or needed a little bit of extra help. And the fork just slides right in there. And you could slide a toothbrush in there, you could slide a pen in there, and it provides a little bit more support. for toileting and grooming. So I know a lot of people here, I've seen it in apartments, they have the safety rails around the toilets. That just helps to make it easier to get on and off the toilet. And believe it or not, the next one is a wiping aid. So they do make devices that if you have a hard time reaching your backside, and if that's the one thing that's keeping you from being independent, it exists. There's all different types of devices, believe it or not. We kind of talked about the toothbrush. One thing to note is that I find that electric toothbrushes already have a little bit more of a built-up grip to them, so sometimes they're easier to hold. And they also require less work because you're not having to brush so much. And then there's the long handle comb or brush or sponge, as Julie has there, which just, again, if you have decreased range of motion, like that sponge is going to allow you to wash your feet safely when you're in the shower without bending over. It can allow you to help wash your back. A long handled comb or brush would be for someone who maybe couldn't reach up to the top of their head and they needed a little bit extra support to lengthen their, lengthen their arm a bit. And then we have some of our home safety aids. These are all bathroom related. And so you have grab bars, your shower tub seat, or raised toilet seat. Bathrooms are a place where a lot of falls happen. When you mix water and tile floor, it can be a recipe for disaster. So making sure that you're using assistive devices in the bathroom that have been recommended for you are key. Even using your walker, your cane, or your rollator when you go into the bathroom. But all of these things are going to provide increased support, increase your safety, and reduce fatigue. And even like sitting to take a shower, not only does it increase your safety, but it conserves your energy so that you can put more energy on other things throughout your day. It's always going to be easier and less strain on your body if you're sitting to do things. Now, of course, as therapists, we're never going to tell you to sit all day, every day. And I don't want you guys going and saying, well, therapy told me that I should just not do anything, right? Like I shouldn't exercise, I shouldn't go anywhere. We didn't say that. But the more that you sit, you're going to conserve energy. The raised toilet seat just makes it easier to get on and off of the toilet. And yeah, and there's a ton of other things that we wouldn't have time to touch base on everything. And that's it. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Fix it. And Norwegian walking stick.
Oh, good. That's what I was doing.
And you need two of them.
Yeah,
Supposed to use two of them.
takes a lot of coordination.
Not just.
Yeah.
I do have one question. Is there a place where, I'm just gonna like a different kind of rollator, is there a place where you could try them out? I know you just buy one, you don't know what it's gonna be. Is there a way to do that?
We have a couple of different types upstairs. It depends on yeah, so if we're working with somebody, we can kind of work on that and figure out what is best for him. Yeah, if we're working with somebody, it's hard when we just give somebody something and we haven't made an assessment or anything like that. Yeah, so if he wants to come see us, we absolutely can help him.
I'm a physical therapist. I worked in neuro rehab, so I really was very well trained in things you're going over. But I asked myself the same question. You go to a surgical supply store and they've got one or two things. There are loads of things in catalogs. They've got a few things upstairs. I didn't know you had liability issues, and then suddenly dawned on me, just go outside the dining room. And that's what we did. And he saw something he loved. We bought it online and it worked, but the answer was so obvious.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Caroline.
Thank you, guys.